You're tired from what, Mom? You don't even do anything. I'm going to Miami for 2 weeks. Can you watch the kids for me? I mean, it's not like you've got anything else to do.
2 weeks. Can you watch the kids for me? It's not like you've got anything else to do.
Okay, Vanessa.
My name is Lorraine Carter. I'm 64 years old, a dark-skinned woman living on the quiet outskirts of Atlanta. After 38 years of teaching, I still wake up at dawn expecting the school bell to ring somewhere. I used to teach children how to write properly, how to say thank you, how to admit their mistakes. Yet now, retired and alone, the house feels unbearably still. No laughter, no footsteps, only the steady ticking of the clock reminding me that I am slowly fading into the background. My husband Richard died when our son Marcus was only 8. Since then, I've been both mother and father. I worked 2 jobs, teaching by day, stocking shelves at the grocery by night, just to make sure Marcus could go to college. He grew into a kind, hard-working man, but too gentle for a world that rewards the loud and the ruthless. This small house on Pinewood Street still holds every memory of my life. The faded wedding photo, the old thank you cards from former students, the porcelain tea set Richard once saved up to buy me. Yet the more I held on to those memories, the more invisible I became. People told me to travel, to relax, to enjoy retirement. But for someone who spent her whole life working, doing nothing felt like disappearing. It was a hot June afternoon when my phone rang. The sunlight spilled through the curtains and lit up my old award on the wall. 38 years of dedicated service, Lorraine Carter. I set my cup of tea down, took a breath, and picked up the phone. The name on the screen made my stomach tighten. Vanessa. Her voice came sharp and brisk, like she was already in a hurry. "Mom, I have a business trip to Miami for 2 weeks. I'll drop the kids at your place. You're not doing anything anyway, right?" I froze. That sentence, "you're not doing anything anymore," was sharper than any insult I'd ever heard. I worked myself to exhaustion, built a life from nothing, raised her husband into the man he is. And now I was useless, Vanessa, I said slowly. "You can ask for help, but don't order me around. I'm retired, not worthless." She chuckled, smooth and dismissive. "Oh, don't take it personally, Mom. Marcus is working all the time and you're free. You should help the family. It's just 2 weeks." I could hear car doors slamming and the children's laughter in the background. Then her tone turned final. "I'll bring them over in the morning. I know you miss them." The line went dead. The phone stayed in my hand for a long time before I finally set it down. The house was silent again, the ticking of the clock louder than before. That was the moment I realized something, not anger, not even pain, but a strange calm. I'd been disrespected, dismissed like a piece of old furniture, but instead of shouting, I felt clarity. I had spent my whole life teaching others how to stay calm in the face of unfairness. Maybe it was time to follow my own lesson. I walked to Richard's photo on the mantel and brushed away the thin layer of dust. "My love," I whispered, "our son chose the wrong woman. But I can't just stand by anymore. I've spent my life teaching others right from wrong. Now I'll have to teach that lesson to her." That night I sat by the window. The light from the street lamps stretched across the dry garden outside. The air smelled like heat and old wood. I pictured the next morning Vanessa stepping out of her shiny SUV, wearing that smug smile and expensive perfume, handing over her 3 children like parcels before speeding away. She'd done it before, but this time would be different. This time I'd be ready. Something inside me shifted, a quiet snap like a thread breaking after being stretched too long. I wasn't just a retired teacher anymore. I was Lorraine Carter, a woman who had taught hundreds of children to listen, observe, and think. And now I'd use those same lessons in a different kind of classroom. I poured another cup of tea. The jasmine scent drifted through the air, calm and steady. My eyes landed on the open notebook on the table. The blank pages looked like they were waiting for something. I picked up my pen and wrote in firm, deliberate strokes. Tomorrow, the lesson begins. The wind stirred the curtains, the night humming softly outside. Somewhere deep in me, a spark lit up, not of anger, but of resolve. The same steady fire that had kept me going through decades of chalk dust and tired mornings. I looked again at Richard's photograph and smiled faintly. You once said, no lesson is ever wasted if it wakes someone up. I think I'm about to prove you right. I turned off the lamp, leaving only the hallway light spilling onto the living room floor. It glowed faintly on that old framed certificate, 38 years of service. In its reflection, I saw my own eyes, bright and unflinching. Tomorrow they would come, and from that moment on, none of our lives would ever be the same. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the curtains, painting the old living room gold. I sat in my worn armchair, holding a steaming cup of tea, staring out at the porch where the last daisies of the season bent gently in the breeze. Everything was quiet, peaceful, until the phone rang sharp, abrupt, slicing through the calm. The name on the screen made my heart pause. Vanessa calling. I took a deep breath, trying to sound composed as I answered. On the other end, her voice came fast, smooth, metallic, and cold. Mom, I'm going on a business trip to Miami for 2 weeks. You'll watch the kids, right? You don't do anything anymore anyway. I said nothing. Only the ticking of the wall clock filled the silence, each second falling heavy between us. I could hear my own breathing, steady and deep, my heartbeat slow and deliberate, each thump carving into the quiet. That sentence, you don't do anything anymore. It sounded casual, but it carried a chill sharper than insult. It wasn't just dismissive, it erased everything I had ever been. 38 years in the classroom, 38 years teaching children to tell right from wrong, to say thank you, to care for others. All of it wiped away in 4 careless words. I gripped the phone tighter, my nails pressing into my skin. Vanessa, I said slowly, each word measured. I think you're mistaken. I have done plenty. My entire life has been doing. I just stopped doing it for people who don't appreciate it. She laughed, that light, hollow laugh of hers, empty and smug. Mom, I don't have time for lectures. I just need your help. Dominic and I, she hesitated, correcting herself quickly. I mean, my team and I have to meet clients. It's just 2 weeks, nothing serious. That slip, Dominic might have gone unnoticed to anyone else, but not me. I'd taught hundreds of children how to lie, and I knew the signs, the slight pause, the quick correction, the change in tone. I didn't confront her, not yet. Instead, I smiled, my voice calm, low, and deliberate. All right, Vanessa, bring them here, and you'll remember this lesson for the rest of your life. She hesitated, probably unsure what I meant, then carried on with her usual condescension. Perfect. I knew you'd agree. I'll drop them off at 7 tomorrow morning. Make sure the beds are ready. They like pizza, soda, and don't make them do chores. I don't want you making them uncomfortable. Yes, I said evenly. I'll remember. When the line went dead, silence returned to the house. I set the phone on the table and looked out the window. The sunlight seemed too bright now, reflecting off the glass, blinding. I saw my reflection, a dark-skinned woman with streaks of gray in her hair, eyes tired but still burning. I thought about the way she spoke, that tone, smooth and careless, the kind people use when they believe they're above you. Vanessa was the kind of woman the world seemed to reward lately. Beautiful, ambitious, fluent in charm and deceit. She knew how to smile in public and wound in private. I had seen many like her before in classrooms, growing up spoiled, never taught to respect anyone. I used to wonder what would happen when they met someone who didn't bend to them. Now I knew the answer. I walked to my cabinet and opened the drawer. Inside were old notebooks from my teaching days, notes, advice, lesson plans, pieces of wisdom I'd written for my students. I pulled one out and opened to the first page. In neat, fading ink, it read, "Respect is earned through patience and truth." I read it again and smiled. It was time to apply my own lesson, not in a classroom, but in real life. The afternoon crept by. I spent the day cleaning the living room, washing blankets for the children, setting things in order. But inside, my thoughts circled that one sentence: you don't do anything anymore. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I had been cast into a role I didn't choose, the elderly woman who exists only to help, to serve, to stay silent. I brewed another pot of tea, sat down, and let the scent of jasmine fill the air. Everything looked calm, but under that calm, something inside me was shifting. I whispered to myself, "My daughter-in-law says I'm useless, but she forgot that I spent my entire life teaching others life lessons." The words hung in the air, not as anger, but as resolve. This wasn't rage, it was clarity. I had allowed people to define my worth for too long, but now I would do what I'd always done best: teach someone the consequences of their choices. Outside, rain began to fall. The gentle patter on the roof blended with the ticking clock, marking the rhythm of a new beginning. Tomorrow, Vanessa would arrive. She would walk into this house smelling of expensive perfume, wrapped in arrogance, convinced she'd dumped her burden on me. What she didn't know was that by leaving her children here, she had opened the first page of a lesson she would never forget. I looked out the window at the gray sky cracking with pale light. The rain fell steadily, the sound soft and deliberate, like a quiet drum roll before a storm. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply, the smell of rain, earth, and the faint sweetness of jasmine filling my lungs. "Tomorrow," I murmured, "the lesson truly begins." The next morning, sunlight flooded my porch. The calm air was broken by the roar of an engine outside the gate. I pulled the curtain slightly and saw a shiny black SUV stop in front of my driveway. The car door opened and Vanessa stepped out in a cream-colored fitted dress, sunglasses covering half her face, her high heels clicking sharply against the concrete. Behind her were 3 children, Tyler, Jasmine, and Malik, each dragging a backpack nearly as big as themselves. Vanessa didn't look at me for long. She opened the trunk and spoke quickly. "The kids' clothes are in here. Malik's medicine is in the left pocket. I have to go, or I'll miss my flight. Oh, and please don't let them watch too much TV, especially those old shows you like." I stood on the porch saying nothing. She pulled her sunglasses down slightly, flashing a thin, sharp smile. "I know you're not busy, Mom. You should be happy to spend some time with them. Bye." She turned, walking briskly back to the car. The children didn't run to hug her. They just stood there, still, as if this scene had played out too many times before. The car door slammed, the engine roared, and the SUV sped off, leaving a swirl of dust in the morning light. I took a deep breath and looked at the 3 small faces before me. Tyler, 12, tall and proud, his eyes cold and defiant. Jasmine, 9, her hair in 2 braids, lips pressed tight, cautious. Malik, 6, hiding behind his sister, wide-eyed and silent. I smiled gently. "Come on in, kids. Breakfast is ready." Tyler glanced around the living room with a half smirk. "Wow, your house is tiny. I thought old people lived in museums." Jasmine laughed. "Do you have Wi-Fi, Grandma? I can't live without it." Malik stayed quiet, but when I handed him a plate of pancakes, he murmured, "Mom said you can't cook anything good." I kept smiling, though my heart felt heavy. They're just children, I reminded myself. Children raised to believe in all the wrong things. There's no Wi-Fi here, I said calmly, but I have pancakes made from your grandpa's recipe. Try them. You might find they taste better than anything you order online. Tyler snorted. Grandpa? Mom said he died poor. I froze. So Vanessa had taught them to despise even the dead. I set down my fork, looked straight at him, and spoke quietly. Your grandpa wasn't rich, but he left me something far more valuable, self-respect. Do you know what that means? None of them answered. I met Tyler's gaze and said, it means doing the right thing, even when no one's watching. The air thickened. Jasmine stared into her milk, stirring slowly. Malik looked at me curious. I could almost see it, the smallest spark of wonder flickering in his eyes. At lunch, they demanded pizza. I made vegetable soup instead. Tyler pushed his bowl away. Don't you know what kids eat? Mom always orders delivery. Nobody cooks this kind of poor food anymore. I met his eyes. In my house, we eat together, and we thank the person who cooked before we start. That's the only rule. He opened his mouth to argue, but Jasmine tugged his sleeve. I caught the briefest flicker of confusion in her eyes, and I knew I'd reach them just a little. That afternoon, I took them to the backyard. The small patch of earth was overgrown with weeds. I handed each of them a pair of gloves. We're going to clean up this garden. Whoever pulls out the most weeds gets to pick dessert. Jasmine frowned. What kind of game is this, Mom said. You always make us do chores. These aren't chores, I said softly. This is a lesson in care. When you learn to take care of a small corner of the world, you start to care about the whole world. Malik giggled. What if I lose? Then you'll learn how to lose without getting angry. They started reluctantly, but soon I heard Jasmine laugh when Malik's hands got covered in dirt and Tyler quietly helped his little brother pull out a stubborn root. The sun dipped low, painting the yard gold. At dinner, they ate without protest. While I washed the dishes, they wandered the living room, stopping at the framed photo of Richard and me on our wedding day. That's Grandpa, Jasmine asked softly. He looks kind. I smiled. He was, and he loved this family more than anything. Dinner passed in a gentle silence. I didn't need to say much. Watching them eat in peace was enough. I knew it was only the beginning, but it was something. When night came, the house was quiet again. I sat in the dim light of the living room, holding a cold cup of tea. The sound of crickets filled the night, and far away, a car drove down the main road. I looked at Richard's picture, the same kind eyes watching me as always. It's time, Richard, I whispered. It's time to teach the last lesson of my life. I knew this first day was only the start of a long battle. But deep inside, something steady burned a calm determination I hadn't felt in years. I was ready to teach them what their mother never could: respect kindness and the strength of silence. That night, I couldn't sleep. I listened to the soft breathing of the children in the next room, the faint smell of pancakes still in the kitchen, and somewhere in the darkness, I realized something simple and certain. They may see me as useless now, but by the time I'm done, they'll understand that every lesson I've ever taught still matters. I closed my eyes, the promise echoing quietly in my mind. The class begins, and you'll learn the things your mother never taught you. The quiet house had turned loud and heavy. Laughter, crying, toys hitting the wall, and music from Tyler's iPad filled every corner. Vanessa had left like a gust of wind, her perfume lingering in the air, leaving behind 3 children who looked at me like I was a stranger. Before closing the door, she said, "They're used to my routine. Don't change anything." Then she walked away without looking back, her SUV vanishing down the small hill in front of the house. I stood by the doorway, watching the red taillights fade, a strange feeling rising inside me. After all my years of teaching, I had never seen children so detached from their own family. They didn't look at me like a grandmother. They looked at me like an outsider. I could see caution, even a hint of contempt in their eyes. But I didn't blame them. I thought they were taught to be this way, and I know exactly who taught them. On the first morning, Tyler refused to eat the breakfast I had prepared. He sat with his arms crossed, eyes glued to his phone, saying flatly, "Mom said I don't have to eat that stuff. It's greasy." I smiled and set the plate down in front of Malik. "Then let your brother eat. Grandma cooks with love, not for nutrition labels." Tyler raised an eyebrow, then walked away. Jasmine said nothing, but I noticed she hid a small photo in her hand, staring at it with a sigh. I've always been observant. In my classroom, I could tell which child was lying or hiding their homework just by a glance. Habits, breathing, the smallest flick of an eye all spoke volumes. Now I was observing again, quietly, patiently. By noon, after they fought over the iPad, I already knew these children weren't just spoiled, they were lost. That night, after they fell asleep, I opened the drawer of my desk and took out an old wooden box. Inside were relics from my teaching years, a red pen, a notebook, and a small voice recorder I used during conferences. I cleaned the dust, replaced the batteries, and hid it inside the picture frame on the TV stand. Another one went into the wall clock, a place no one ever checks. A good teacher, I whispered, always records her lessons. I started keeping a daily log. Every action, every word, every mood of the children went into that notebook. Tyler grew tense whenever his father's name came up. Jasmine avoided eye contact when I mentioned her mother. Malik, the youngest, would wake up crying at night clutching a worn-out teddy bear. I didn't interfere. I watched. I waited. On the fifth night, the first crack appeared. Thunder rolled outside as rain beat against the roof. I was making tea when I heard quiet sobs from the next room. I pushed the door open gently. Jasmine sat by the window, hugging that photo, her small shoulders trembling. I walked over, rested a hand on her back. "Do you miss your mom?" I asked softly. She didn't look at me. "She'll be home soon," she whispered. Then, after a pause, her voice dropped even lower, almost drowned by the rain. "Mom said Uncle Dominic loves her more than Dad." I froze. For a heartbeat, every sound around me disappeared. Only the rain tapping on the glass remained, and that one sentence echoed in my head, "Uncle Dominic loves her more than Dad." I looked down. Jasmine had fallen asleep, tears still glistening on her cheeks. I pulled the blanket over her and quietly stepped out. It was 11 p.m. The clock ticked loudly in the silence. I turned on the light, opened my notebook, and wrote down her words exactly as she said them. My hand trembled slightly, but my mind was razor sharp. 38 years teaching moral lessons had taught me to recognize deception, and this wasn't it. Children don't invent stories like that. I sat there for a long time, my eyes resting on Richard's photo. His steady gaze seemed to meet mine through the years. "You see, don't you?" I whispered. "I told you something wasn't right." Then I stood, opened a cabinet, and took out another recorder. This one went under the dining table, right where Vanessa used to make her morning calls to Marcus. I needed to know what she was really saying. From that day on, I lived two lives. By day, I was the gentle grandmother cooking, telling stories, teaching the kids to bake. By night, I became the watcher, the note-taker, the quiet hunter of truth. Every entry in my notebook was a puzzle piece, and slowly the picture was forming. Inside me, anger had turned into focus. A good teacher doesn't need to shout, I told myself. She just needs proof. I didn't know yet what I would uncover, but deep down I sensed it. Whatever it was, it would change everything. That night, I sat by the window, watching the rain flood the garden. The streetlight reflected in the puddles, flickering like a small fire. The world outside was calm, but I knew the real storm was just beginning. I never thought I would do this, but some lessons can only be taught by tearing away the veil of lies. That morning, I saw Tyler sitting at the dining table, his eyes fixed on his phone. When I walked closer, he flinched and quickly locked the screen. But I caught a glimpse, a man I didn't recognize standing beside Vanessa under the sunlight, both smiling brightly. Later, when the children went outside to play, I picked up Tyler's phone, the one he never let go of. My heart pounded, but my hands were steady. His password was Jasmine. He thought I wouldn't figure it out, but I had taught children long enough to know how they think. The screen lit up. Inside his gallery were photos of Vanessa, supposedly in Miami for work, but the pictures told a different story. I saw beaches, hotel balconies, and beside her was the same man, Dominic. They were holding hands, laughing into the camera. One photo had a caption, "We'll finally be free." My blood ran cold. I opened the messages. Between Vanessa and Dominic were hundreds of texts, not just love notes, but plans. Marcus will sign all the papers this week. Once he does, the accounts will only have my name. I'll take the kids to Florida before he realizes. I stopped at a message from 3 days ago. "Don't worry, Dominic. The old woman's house is perfect for now. She's too naive to suspect anything." The old woman? I repeated it silently, each word cutting deeper than the last. They were talking about me. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just sat there staring out the window where the afternoon light fell on the cracked wall. "A good teacher doesn't need to scold," I whispered. "She just needs proof." I picked up my camera, took photos of every message, every image, then emailed them to myself. I deleted all traces, locked the phone, and placed it back exactly where I found it. When the children came home, I smiled, cooked dinner as if nothing had changed. No one could see the storm building behind my calm eyes. That night, I sat alone at the dining table. The clock ticked steadily, pretending life in this house was still peaceful. I took out my notebook and wrote carefully, each line like a verdict. Vanessa Carter affair. Dominic, accomplice. Financial fraud, unauthorized transfers. Plan to move children to Florida. Marcus unaware. I looked at what I had written, each word carved like a mark on old wood. I was no longer the gentle mother or the quiet grandmother. I was Lorraine Carter, the teacher, who knew how to gather evidence, organize truth, and defend what was right. I opened my contacts and scrolled to a name I hadn't called in years, Carol Simmons. Carol was my oldest friend, now working for Child Protective Services. When she picked up, her voice was full of surprise. "Lorraine, my God, it's been ages." "What's going on?" I spoke slowly, every word deliberate, as if I were reading aloud to a classroom. "Carol, I need to talk about my son and his children. Something serious may be happening. I have proof, texts, photos, a plan involving kidnapping and financial fraud. I don't know how deep it goes, but I can't stay silent." There was a long pause on the other end. Then Carol's voice turned firm. "Send me everything. I'll forward it to the legal team. And, Lorraine, be careful. If she finds out, she might react badly. I know," I said, my voice calm, almost cold, "but I've spent my life teaching people to take responsibility for their actions. It's time someone else learned that lesson." After the call, I sent every file, photos, recordings, screenshots to Carol. Then I forwarded them to one more person, our family lawyer, Mr. Martinez, the same man who had helped me when Richard passed away. My message was short. prepare the documents. The real lesson is about to begin. When I hit send, I leaned back in my chair. Outside, the sky was pitch black clouds swallowing the moonlight. The kitchen light fell across my face, casting sharp shadows that made me look older, sterner, but unbreakable. In my reflection on the window, I saw not fear, but the steady resolve of a woman who had lost everything once and refused to lose again. The rain started tapping against the glass in heavy rhythm. One thought echoed in my mind, clear and cold as chalk on a blackboard. Vanessa Carter, you've stepped into my classroom, and here I'm the one who gives the grades. I closed my notebook and turned off the light. In the darkness, a faint glow slipped under the doorframe, a reminder that no matter how long it hides, the truth always finds its way to the light. I've always believed that if you want to teach someone about morality, you must first let them feel love. And for my 3 grandchildren, that lesson had to begin with the simplest things. That morning, I turned off the Wi-Fi in the house, locked away the iPads and phones in a cabinet. When the children woke up, Tyler frowned, Jasmine pouted, and Malik almost cried because his game console was gone. Tyler shouted, "Grandma, there's no internet." How are we supposed to live like this? I simply shrugged, setting breakfast on the table, eggs, toast, and fresh orange juice still steaming. By learning how to live for real, I said softly. Lesson 1 today, people. Don't need Wi-Fi to connect. They need a heart. They looked at me as if I'd just come from another planet. But I was used to that look. It was the same look students gave me on their first day of class, thinking they already knew everything, until they realized true learning starts outside the screens they cling to. At noon, I took all 3 to the backyard. The old garden still carried traces of Richard's hands, my late husband, who once planted roses along the fence. I handed each of them a pair of gloves. Today, we'll bring this garden back to life, I said. Because anything once beautiful can bloom again if you care for it. At first, they resisted. Tyler complained about dirt. Jasmine sighed dramatically, and Malik sat in the grass playing with the soil. But slowly, laughter began to fill the air. First from Malik, who found a small worm wriggling between his fingers. Then from Jasmine when she planted her first rose bush. Tyler stayed quiet, but helped me water the plants. In his eyes, I saw something soften, as if a thin layer of frost was finally melting away. That evening, after the sun went down, I told them stories about their father Marcus. I told them how he once tried to hide a bad grade, how he got into a fight defending his friend. My tone was gentle, neither praising nor condemning, only to show that everyone makes mistakes, but what matters is learning how to rise again. When I mentioned the time Marcus skipped school just to work part-time and help me with bills, Jasmine looked up, eyes wide. "Grandma, did Daddy really do that?" "Yes, honey," I said, because he loved his family and he never wanted me to carry everything alone. Her eyes sparkled. Then she whispered, "I think Daddy's brave." I smiled. "He is. And one day you'll be too if you learn to love the right way." That night, I heard whispers from their room. No fights, no whining, just quiet conversation. Malik's voice was soft. "Is Grandma lonely?" And Tyler replied, "Maybe, but she's strong." I stood by the door listening. My heart ached, but in a warm way. They were beginning to understand, even if only a little, the value of real love. The next day, I taught Jasmine how to bake an apple pie. She measured the flour, mixed the butter, stirred carefully with her small hands while I guided her. The smell of pie filled the kitchen, bringing back memories of the years Marcus was still a boy. When the crust turned golden, Jasmine beamed. "It's beautiful." I placed a hand on her shoulder. Everything becomes beautiful when you make it with love. Tyler sat at the table quietly, staring at the phone I had just returned to him. The defiance in his eyes was gone. When I walked over, he quickly turned off the screen, but not before I caught a glimpse of the image his mother, Vanessa, in a white dress holding Dominic. He looked at me, eyes glassy, and put the phone down without a word. I didn't ask. I sat beside him in silence. After a long pause, he whispered, "Grandma, do you hate Mom?" I exhaled slowly. "No, Tyler, I don't hate her." "Then why does she hate you?" Jasmine had come in quietly, standing still, watching me. I looked at them both, my voice soft but steady. "She doesn't hate me, honey. She fears me. She fears the truth." The room fell silent. They didn't fully understand my words, but I saw the confusion in their eyes, a mix of innocence and dawning awareness. And that was the beginning of understanding. That afternoon, while I cleaned the kitchen, Tyler came to me and handed me his phone. "I don't want this anymore," he said. "It hurts to look at it." I didn't say a word. I just took his hand and squeezed it gently. In that moment, I knew my class was working. No blackboard, no chalk, just a steady heart and 3 souls slowly relearning what love truly meant. That night, the wind brushed through the new garden. I stood by the window watching the rosebuds sway under the porch light. From the children's laughter echoing down the hall, I thought I heard Richard's voice whisper, "You're teaching the world again, Lorraine." And I replied softly, "No, just teaching a few children who forgot what's real." I turned off the lights and headed to bed. Outside, the storm was drawing near, but inside this house, for the first time in a long while, I could see a faint light, the kind born from love and faith, the kind I once thought I'd lost forever. That afternoon, the rain drizzled softly, each drop tapping against the window frame like a restless heartbeat. I sat at the dining table, in front of me a thick envelope filled with evidence photos, bank statements, messages, and recordings. Everything was ready. Marcus would be home soon. I heard the car pull up outside, the sound of keys turning in the lock. Marcus walked in, rein still clinging to his coat, his face wearied, eyes heavy with exhaustion from another late shift. He saw me sitting there, my hand resting on the sealed envelope. "You're waiting for me, Mom?" he asked, his voice hoarse and tired. I nodded. "Marcus, I need to talk to you. It's serious." He sat down across from me, concern flickering in his eyes. "What is it? Did the kids do something?" I slid the envelope toward him. "Not them. Vanessa." He frowned, glancing from the envelope back to me. "Vanessa? Mom, not this again. You're still suspicious of her?" I said nothing. Instead, I opened the envelope and pulled out a few photos. The light hit the glossy paper, Vanessa in a white dress smiling brightly, her hand in that of a man I didn't know, Dominic. Marcus froze, holding the photos. "What is this?" "Look closely," I said softly, "and listen to this." I pressed play on my phone. Vanessa's voice came through clear and sharp. "Once Marcus signs everything, we're gone. Dominic's already arranged the house in Florida." The air in the room went still. Marcus sat motionless, eyes wide, lips trembling. I could see his chest rise and fall faster, the reality sinking in. He dropped his head into his hands, voice cracking. "Mom, I'm such an idiot. I believed her. I let her control everything." I stepped closer, laid a hand on his shoulder. "No, Marcus, you're not an idiot. You were deceived, and now it's time to stand up." He lifted his head, tears glistening in his eyes. "How long have you known?" "Since the day she left the kids with me," I said. "Since the day she told me I don't do anything anymore. I couldn't stand by and watch our family fall apart, and neither can you." Marcus was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded, the defeat in his eyes slowly replaced by resolve. "What do I do now, Mom?" I picked up the phone and dialed Mr. Martinez, the lawyer. When he answered, I spoke clearly. "She'll be back soon. We have all the proof." "Get everything ready." Martinez's voice was calm, firm. "I've already filed a temporary custody motion for Marcus. Once she's back, stay calm, Mrs. Carter. Don't confront her directly. Let me and CPS handle the rest." When I hung up, Marcus looked at me and asked quietly, "Aren't you scared?" I smiled faintly. "Scared? I've taught hundreds of lying, stubborn, impossible children. I only feel sorry for her because she doesn't realize she's playing games with someone who spent her life studying the truth." Marcus's lips trembled, his voice thick. "Mom, I don't even know how to thank you." I brushed my fingers against his cheek. "You don't have to thank me. Just be strong. From now on, you protect the kids. I'll be right behind you." We sat in silence for a while, the only sound, the steady rhythm of the rain. I looked at my son, and in his face I saw something shift, a man awakening, no longer the gentle boy who avoided conflict, but someone ready to fight for what mattered. I lifted my cup of tea, letting the warmth steady my hands. "Marcus," I said slowly, "the day she comes back will be the first day of freedom." He met my gaze, his eyes fierce now. "I promise you, Mom, I won't let her hurt anyone ever again." I nodded. "And remember, don't lose your temper. She'll try to make you snap." "But we don't need anger. We have the truth." He squeezed my hand. "You're right. The truth is our weapon." That night, I watched my son fall asleep on the couch, his face calmer than it had been in years. In his stillness, I saw growth, not the boy I once protected, but a man ready to face the storm. I turned toward the window. The rain still fell, the streetlights reflecting in the puddles like rivers of fate. I whispered to myself, "This lesson isn't just for Vanessa. It's for Marcus to remind him that love isn't blind and truth never bows." I turned off the lights, leaving only the faint glow from the kitchen. Inside me, fear had vanished. All that remained was a calm determination, the quiet strength of a woman who knew the final battle was near, and this time she would be the one to write how the story ends. That morning, the sky hung heavy and gray, the air thick and still, as if holding its breath before a storm. I rose early, made breakfast for the children, and set the table in silence. Everything was ready. The envelope of evidence on the table, Attorney Martinez sitting quietly with Carol from CPS, and Marcus standing by the window, his hands clasped tightly, his face tense. The sound of heels echoed through the hallway. Vanessa stepped in, wrapped in a fitted dress, her hair perfectly curled, a large pair of sunglasses covering half her face. She moved as though she owned the place, the sharp scent of her expensive perfume filling the room, sweet and suffocating. "Hi, Mom," she said with a bright, false smile. "Where are my kids? I hope you didn't spoil them." I looked at her, silent for a few seconds before answering. "They're in their room, but before you see them, you should talk to Marcus." She slid off her glasses and tossed her purse onto the chair. "Talk about what I just came to pick up the kids. I have a flight tonight." Marcus took a step forward, his voice low but steady. "No, Vanessa, you're not going anywhere." Vanessa laughed short and sharp. "Oh, Marcus, please, don't start again. You're overreacting as usual." Martinez placed a folder on the table, his tone calm but cutting. "Mrs. Vanessa Carter, I'm Attorney Martinez. This is a temporary custody order issued this morning by the Fulton County Court. You might want to read it carefully before saying another word." Vanessa turned to him, her voice rising. "What is this? Some kind of joke?" I stood up slowly, eyes fixed on her. No, Vanessa, this is the truth. I nodded to Marcus. He unlocked his phone and pressed play. Vanessa's voice filled the room, unmistakable and cold. Once Marcus signs everything, we're gone. Dominic's already arranged the house in Florida. The air froze. Vanessa went pale, took a step back, then straightened, trying to recover her composure. That's not me. That's edited. You can't prove anything. Martinez slid documents and photographs across the table, text messages, bank records, the forged signature. There's plenty of proof, Mrs. Carter, including evidence of financial fraud and forgery. The authorities have already been notified. Vanessa stood there, her eyes darting between me, Marcus, and the 3 children who had just stepped out of their room. Jasmine clutched Malik's hand, and Tyler stood beside his father. The tension was thick enough to choke on. She turned to Marcus, her voice trembling, though she tried to keep her tone sharp. You can't do this to me, Marcus. You think you're better than me? After everything I've done for this family? Marcus didn't answer. His voice was calm, but edged with pain. Everything you did was for yourself, Vanessa, not for this family. I stepped forward, standing tall in the center of the room, and said, a woman you called useless just saved your family. Vanessa spun toward me, eyes blazing. Her lips trembled, but no words came out. I saw fear in her gaze, the kind of fear only truth can bring. Mom, Jasmine's small voice broke the silence. Vanessa turned toward her daughter, forcing a smile through tears. Sweetheart, listen, Mommy didn't mean Tyler cut her off, his voice shaking but strong. A mother doesn't call her son a mistake. The word struck harder than any slap. Vanessa froze, her mouth slightly open, but nothing came out. Malik clung to my arm and whispered, Grandma, are we okay now? I knelt down, held him close, and said softly, Yes, baby, we're finally okay. Vanessa began to cry, but it wasn't remorse, it was defeat. She looked around, realizing that every door had closed, every lie exposed. Martinez gathered the papers and turned to Carol. I think that's all for today, he said coldly. We'll follow up with Mrs. Carter for the remaining documents. Vanessa stumbled back, her knees giving way as she sank into a chair. Marcus didn't look at her again. He turned to me and took my hand tightly in his. The room fell silent. Only the sound of rain tapping against the windows, the shallow breaths of 3 children clinging to each other. Their eyes were tired, but there was light in them again. I looked at Vanessa one last time. Today's lesson is over, but you can always retake it if you ever want to learn how to be a decent human being. She lifted her head, her eyes hollow, saying nothing. I turned and led the children down the hall. Behind me, I heard Martinez murmur to Marcus, It's over now. But I knew better. This wasn't just an ending. It was the beginning of a new chapter 1, where truth no longer hid in the shadows and justice finally had a voice. The divorce hearing took place on a cloudy morning. Sunlight filtering weakly through the courthouse windows, casting pale reflections on the polished wooden floor. I sat in the back row, fingers wrapped around a cup of hot coffee, my eyes fixed on the front of the room where Vanessa sat, head bowed, signing papers. No elegant dresses now, no fake smiles. She wore a plain coat, her face pale, her hair messy. Marcus sat across from her, silent and motionless. Attorney Martinez stood beside him, his voice firm and steady as he spoke before the judge announced the ruling. The defendant has admitted to forgery and financial fraud. With the evidence verified and submitted, custody of the 3 minor children will be granted to Mr. Marcus Carter. Vanessa didn't lift her head. When the pen made its final scratch across the paper, the sound was soft but sharp enough to cut through the heavy silence. I saw her shoulders tremble, and in that instant, everything she had tried to hide, her arrogance, deceit, and greed, fell away. The courtroom doors opened, and a cold wind swept in. I stepped forward, stopping in front of her. Vanessa looked up, her eyes empty, her expression drained of all color. In that hallway crowded with people walking past, it was just the two of us, two women, one who had lost everything to lies, and one who had won through truth. I met her eyes and said quietly, "Today's lesson is over, but you can always retake it if you ever wish to become a decent person." She stood still, then gave a faint, broken smile. Without a word, Vanessa turned and walked away. Her footsteps echoed down the hall, growing softer until her figure disappeared beyond the corner. She didn't look back. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel joy. Only a heavy ache, like a teacher watching a student leave the classroom without ever learning the lesson she needed most. Marcus approached me, his eyes red. He took my hand and said softly, "Mom, I don't even know what to say except thank you. Without you, I'd have lost everything." I squeezed his hand gently. "Don't thank me, Marcus. Thank the truth. It's what saved us." Outside, the clouds began to break apart. Sunlight spilled weakly across the courthouse steps. We walked out together. Carol arrived with the children, and as soon as they saw us, they ran forward. Jasmine was the first to reach me, throwing her arms around my waist, tears streaming down her face. "Grandma, is it really over?" she asked, her voice trembling. I brushed her hair back and nodded. "Yes, sweetheart, it's over. You're safe now." Malik hugged my leg tightly while Tyler stood a few steps away, looking between his father and me. He didn't speak, but his eyes said everything: pain, confusion, and finally relief. Then the three of them came together, their small arms wrapping around me. Their warmth pressed into my chest, their sobs soft and uneven. Marcus placed a hand on my shoulder, and in that moment, I knew that our family, broken and bruised, had finally begun to heal. I looked up at the sky. The clouds drifted apart, and sunlight poured down gently. I thought of Vanessa, of the woman who had built her life on deceit and destroyed it with her own hands. But I didn't hate her. I only hoped that one day when she looked back, she would understand that justice isn't revenge, it's redemption. As we left the courthouse, I turned for one last look. The door closed behind us with a soft click, like the closing of a long, painful chapter. In my mind, I heard the words I used to tell my students: when you learn from your mistakes, that's when the real lesson begins. Marcus walked beside me, the three children between us. For the first time in months, my heart felt light. Justice had come, not through anger, but through clarity. And I knew that from this day forward, we would keep living, not in bitterness, but in the quiet light of truth. 6 months had passed since the trial. Atlanta felt softer now, calmer, as if the city itself had learned to breathe again. Every morning I still woke early, brewed my tea, and opened the window to let the sunlight spill into the quiet house. The laughter of the children drifted from the living room, bright and melodic, the sound of a new life rewritten after the storm. Life had returned to its rhythm, only this time it felt right. Marcus had gone back to his old job at the engineering firm. The weariness that once haunted his face had been replaced by calm and confidence. Sometimes he would smile and tell me, "Mom, I never knew happiness could be this simple. Just coming home, hearing my kids laugh, and seeing you safe." The children had grown too, softer and wiser. Jasmine loved to cook. Tyler had taken up painting, and little Malik was no longer afraid of the dark. When I watched them play in the garden, my heart would swell with a warmth I hadn't felt in years, a quiet, steadfast kind of happiness. One afternoon, I decided to do something I hadn't dared to dream of in a long time, reopen my classroom. But this time, it wasn't a classroom with chalkboards and bells. It was my living room where neighborhood children could come to paint, to talk, and to learn how to be kind. I hung a wooden sign outside the house, Miss Lorraine's Art and Life School. Below it, I painted a line in soft cursive. We learn to see the world with both heart and hands. On the first day, 8 children showed up. They brought sketchbooks, paintbrushes, and the kind of innocent curiosity I had missed so dearly. I taught them to paint the garden behind the house, the same garden where my grandchildren and I had once planted roses together. But more than that, I taught them about courage, truth, and love, the real lessons I had learned the hard way. Then came Mother's Day on a soft spring morning when the wind carried the scent of new blossoms. My grandchildren surprised me with a handmade card carefully glued from colored paper and drawn with clumsy but loving strokes. On the front, in Tyler's uneven handwriting, were the words, "You taught us how to be a family again." Inside was Jasmine's drawing me, Marcus, and the 3 kids holding hands in the garden under the sun. Around us, Malik had drawn bright red roses. "These are your roses, Grandma," he said proudly, smiling so wide it broke my heart. I held the card in my hands, feeling my throat tighten. There was a time when I thought I had nothing left, when I believed I was merely existing, waiting for life to end quietly. But now I understood every lesson I had ever taught, every sacrifice, every tear had led me to this moment. That afternoon, Marcus recorded a short video for the family to keep. I sat in my little art room, surrounded by the children's paintings, bursts of color, hope, and life. The camera turned toward me. I looked straight into the lens and smiled softly. My voice came out calm, gentle, layered with the weight of everything that had happened. My daughter-in-law once called me useless, but she forgot that I've spent a lifetime teaching others their most important lessons. The camera panned slowly toward the window, where the golden light of dusk poured into the room. The roses outside swayed in the breeze, the children's laughter echoing through the house, clear, full, alive. I closed my eyes for a moment and listened. The wind carried the faint scent of roses. Everything inside me felt still, complete, and filled with quiet grace. There was no anger left, no bitterness, only peace. A woman once called useless had saved an entire family, not with revenge, but with compassion, patience, and truth. And as with every lesson I ever taught, I knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a life rebuilt, of hearts healed, and of love that, like the roses in my garden, would keep blooming forever.